rolling green-covered hills of Richmond, Kentucky, to the craggier climbs of Cedar City, Utah, and all the football you can handle in between. We're going around the UAC. Please enjoy today's in-flight entertainment, the Rev himself, Dustin Hilton.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Happy week 6. Interesting week last week in the UAC. We'll talk about that. Also get some of your comments. Probably a quick show tonight just because I've got to actually pack and get ready for some work travel this week. But we'll go through. Let's see what happens. So before we get started, give a quick shout to the channel sponsors versus Sports Simulator. If you haven't checked them out, pretty interesting stuff, especially if you like to gamble on games. I'm not saying you should, but it's a good tool that you can use. And then also Walk On Apparel. I'm actually wearing a Walk On Apparel shirt right now for Idaho. You go to the website, use the code FCSFansNation. You get 15% off of your order. And that money, the part of that money goes back to the school's athletic funds, which is pretty cool. So really comfortable stuff. Kind of glad I got this Idaho shirt. It worked out for this one. I mean, they're not a bad school, even if Chris Hammond went there. I'm just kidding. Shout out Chris, and also shout out to the Tubs at the Club guys. If you haven't checked them out, I recommend that you should. Before we get into the games, you got a comment right here. Lazy Wildcat watching and listening from Albany, Georgia. Hey man, thanks for watching and listening. Appreciate you. Hope things are good in Georgia. And then there's another comment here. I'm going to leave for after I go through the games because it's a pretty funny one. Let's go through the results from last week because it was an interesting week. So Austin P traveled up to St. Charles, Missouri to play Lindenwood. Absolutely boat raced them 52-10. Game wasn't even close. Mike DeLello looked good, had 346 or 349 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. Nice performance by him, all around dominating performance by Austin P. And Austin P each week is, I don't want to say they're starting to look better, but I think they're starting to put some of the pieces together, although Mike DeLello did not look like himself last week against SFA, but it also could have been just a conundrum game for him. Charleston State went to Hammond, played Southeastern Louisiana, beat them 14-13. Now, Southeastern Louisiana is a prime example of why I don't believe there should be any sort of polling until now. Southeastern Louisiana was a top 10 team, top 25 team according to preseason polls. Southeastern Louisiana is 0-5 with losses to Houston Christian, and they're about to go 0-6 playing Incarnate Word this week. The Southland is hot garbage, but Southeastern Louisiana is hotter garbage. I never thought I would say that they'd be the worst team in the conference, but they sure are looking like it right now. They might be able to squeeze out some wins, but 0-6, I mean, you're already damned to a sub 500 season, and you still got some tough schools in Louisiana to play, get schools that tend to give you trouble just because of your rivalry and everything else. So things are not looking good in Hammond, USA. Hate it for you, Danny Johnson. Know you love that team thick and thin, but still hate it for you. Utah Tech went to Fort Collins after a whole bunch of delays, lost to Colorado State 41-20. Closer than I thought it would be for Utah Tech going up against the FBS school. I think some of the lightning delays and stuff might have been beneficial to them, but it just wasn't their day. Kobe Tracy had 185 yards passing. Ronnie Walker Jr. had 83 yards on the ground. So like I said, it wasn't a bad performance out of them. And then Bo Sparks had a couple touchdowns. Don't want to leave him off because he played well for them. It's just wasn't their game, but they're still transitioning. I think a lot of folks just forget that they're still transitioning, still coming up. They've got a big ladder to climb, especially compared to like North Alabama, who might have been ahead of them in terms of just kind of getting a head start on being Division I. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Utah Tech become better over the next 2 years. They may not be a playoff team, but middle of the pack team is a nice improvement from where they were. Let's see, what else do we have? Texas A&M Commerce got Ken Nakados just beat up on 56-27 in the Ryan Ivey Colby Carthel reunion game. Brian Maurer, man, looked like a stud. Got mentioned on Fat Stats on Hack City This is the game that you would expect from SFA. This is the kind of performance you would expect last week against Austin Peay. Honestly, Brian Maurer did not look like himself, and I assume adjustments were made during the week with the coaches. And I mean, he went for 342. He had 5 touchdowns. Kylan Harris had 111 receiving yards. I think he had 3 touchdowns, and then Anthony Williams on the ground had 3 touchdowns as well. And I think he had 80 something rushing yards, 71 rushing yards. So, oh no, sorry, yeah, I was right, 81 rushing yards. So yeah, great. I mean, a great performance, great defensive performance. This is what you expect to see from SFA. SFA now is going to finish at Temper 3-2. They play Utah Tech next week. I know Utah Tech beat them last year. That was a different sort of team. So SFA be 4-2. They might be knocking on a top 25 vote when they play Central Arkansas on October the 14th. And that could be a very, very interesting game. Very interesting game. I'm sure Zach McKinnell would go if he could. But speaking of Zach, he says the GOAT is back. No, man, it was great having you on the show last week, though. You definitely made the show a lot better. Let's see what other games we had. Eastern Kentucky went to Florence, beat North Alabama in their gold out game. Also, to shout out Brandon Haddock, man. He tried to get me a gold out shirt, but it didn't work out. But he's going to get me a hat. And like I said, if you send me any of your team swag, I will rock it. Hats are the easiest thing to show up on the pod. So if you want them to show up, you can send them my way. No, Eastern Kentucky look good. Eastern Kentucky looks like they're looking like a formidable top 25 team. Now people were dogging on them because they started 0-3, with 2 FBS losses and a loss to Western Carolina. And now look at them. They are turning things around and doing what you'd expect to do. And they are in folks' top 25 deservedly. Abilene Christian went to Denton and got paid. I mean, the score is closer than what the game was because North Texas was up big early, but 45-31 is the final. So I think Abilene Christian did cover the spread for you guys who gamble. I mean, it wasn't a bad performance, honestly, for the Wildcats. Maverick McElvore had 217 throwing. Javion Sunday had 140 on the ground. They played all right, but again, you're playing an FBS team who's not a slack sort of FBS team. So, I mean, it was a good performance. And finally, the game of the week last week, and probably the most amusing game of the whole week. If you haven't seen it, go back. And if you don't follow Central Arkansas football on Twitter, you should, because their media folks are freaking awesome. But they got hold of the Southern Utah coaches show, and they got a hold of a certain clip where Coach Fitzgerald, and sorry, Coach, calling you out on this one because it was too damn funny. They asked what the mascot was for UCA, and he said that they've got a cat on the middle of the field. And so then the quote was one of them cats that came from their media guy. So UCA had some fun with it in their social media, and you should go check it out. 29-27 was the final. Southern Utah almost made this comeback, and I know there was lightning delays and weather delays. It was a long game, but it was a good one. Justin Miller for Southern Utah looked really good. I thought he had a pretty great game. Let's see. Braden Whistler had like 58 on the ground. Tim Patrick Jr. had 79 yards receiving. Of course, when you look at Central Arkansas, Will McElvain went for 349 and a couple touchdowns. Shunderick Powell broke 100 again on the ground. Shunderick Powell, I think if there's going to be a running back who wins a Walter Payton Award, it's Shunderick Powell. I think he's currently the best running back in the FCS. I think he'll be a finalist. He is just absolutely obliterating defenses that he plays against. But shout out to Southern Utah. They kept it close. I've said this on Twitter, they're a year away from the playoffs. I'll say it now. They're going to be that team next year that nobody ranks except for Jamie Williams. And Jamie Williams is going to put him like 50 in his poll, probably 40, 50. Because Jamie Williams, I will say this, is really good at picking out folks and talent that are about to ascend. And although he did miss SFA the year SFA made the playoffs, but in 2021, But he usually gets this right. And I think you'll see Southern Utah in being like the 40 or 50 range. And then I think you'll see them as a playoff team next year because they'll have all their freshmen and sophomores more developed and they'll be able to play a complete game. It's just something they're not doing right now. But they're close. They're real stinking close. So shout out to the team. I know Coach Sheldon and staff watch this podcast, and he also, knows that I'm not going to mince words about a team, even my own. They've looked really good. They're just not there yet this year. Let's see. So let's go. There's a couple of comments. One of them I want to kind of touch on here. This guy, my favorite Jacksonville State fan, which nice come from behind win against Sam Houston. I don't know how the hell you trailed to a team that's that bad, but you did. But can we get back Sam Houston in exchange for Central Arkansas? We'll also take Charlton for a Texas backfill. Look, you don't deserve Tarleton and Central Arkansas. Why would they want to move down conferences? UCA would want to play in a better conference. CUSA is not a good conference this year. I'm sorry, you're not. You're probably the fourth best FCS conference. You might be up there with the CAA, but I just don't know. How Jacksonville State, who are going to backdoor their way into a bowl, which is pretty impressive. They're going to get in the Bahamas Bowl or some shit like that. But I don't know how you guys trailed to a team that has such a bad quarterback in Shoemaker. And I see you have another comment right here. It says, I've been considering putting choking hazard signs all over Elliott Bauer Stadium. Oh man, that's pretty funny. I'm not gonna lie. I would, but I don't intentionally ever go to Huntsville. I have no desire to go see the prison or see any prisoners, so I stay out of Huntsville. I've gone to Huntsville. I can tell you how many times I've gone to Huntsville in my life voluntarily, and it's been 3 times. And none of those involve jail, because that would technically be involuntary, and that's another story. But no, I've never been to jail in Huntsville either. But so enough talk on that. A couple of things I'm going to touch on before we get to the games this week, because we don't have very many games around the United. It's a sort of a softer week this week, but there's been more and more poll discussion this week. Especially with the results of the North Dakota State game, the results of Elon beating William and Mary, and the results of Holy Cross losing to Harvard. If you haven't checked out the top 25 from last week, the top 25 got decimated, absolutely decimated. I think more top 25 teams lost than won, but I could be wrong on that number, but it was pretty damn close. Again, this is why I don't believe in polls until now, because you have a week like this where everything gets shaken up, and then it doesn't make any sort of sense. I don't know, Zach will agree with me on that one, because he is a poll voter and he's probably one of the most accurate poll voters, but Zach also got pretty punitive in his poll too, I saw, or at least the Blue Bloods did. I don't know if it was Zach's personally or if anybody else in the staff, but they went after North Dakota bad for that loss. But everybody has an opinion on the polls, and so you can argue right or wrong. Like, I've seen folks who are ranking South Dakota ahead of North Dakota State because South Dakota did beat them by 5 on their homecoming. But I don't know how you take a team whose other wins are against Lamar and St. Thomas and vault them from unranked to the top 10. And that's what I've seen some folks do, and that's just what I personally disagree with. I think they are a top 25 team. I just don't know if they're a top 10 team. But then I also don't think North Dakota State is not a top 10 team, even with that loss. North Dakota State, they did show some weakness. They also were without their best defensive player too, which it does make an impact. So to this point, I personally ranked South Dakota 16 in my poll. I ranked North Dakota State 9. Am I wrong? I could be wrong, and that's okay. But we've seen some other people who got mad at certain folks calling out their polls, try to point out this hypocrisy of polls being incorrect whenever some of the polls they had this week were such garbage that it made you look at it and go, how is that? How are you even voting? Like, there were folks who didn't even have South Dakota in their top 25. And I'm like, did you not watch any of the games this weekend? I think they're a top 25 team if you're missing that. There are folks who still had William and Mary ranked high even after losing to Elon, which shows me you didn't watch any of the damn games. There are folks who have Montana still in in their top 15. Yep, Montana State did win this week. They did. And, they beat that juggernaut, that powerhouse. Such a great win for them against Idaho State. Yeah, exactly. Getting wins against bottom feeders is what you expect a top 25 team to do. You don't expect the top 25 team to struggle against bottom feeders, which Montana has done. But I digress. The point of this is each week, the FCS Fans Nation, we do a poll. That's the FCS media poll. We bring in other folks as well, bring in their polls with their permission because they are the FCS media, and we post it out. What we also do, unlike some other polls that are used nationally, we put out everybody's poll. So you can see who voted for what and how they did it. And I think that brings a healthy discourse. I think you should be able to debate polls because polls really aren't stats. Polls are opinions. And I think you could argue, some folks could argue that South Dakota is a top 10 team. Some folks could argue that maybe Central Arkansas is the best, worst record. What they're now 3-2, top 20 team. Because you could have them in the top 20 based upon their resume. You could have Austin Peay in your top 25. You could have Eastern Kentucky in your top 25. You could technically have SFA at 3-2 in your top 25, because you're looking at record. I think there's more behind resume than record, though, whenever it comes to voting. And that's another reason why I couldn't move South Dakota ahead of North Dakota State. At this point, head-to-head should be a tiebreaker versus a true metric. Because, like I said, let's look at the records. North Dakota State beat Central Arkansas, top 25 team. North Dakota State demolished Eastern Washington, top 25 team. And I said demolish. Kyler's going to get mad. They didn't demolish them, but they beat them up, right? So top 25 team, right? South Dakota beat that powerhouse out of Beaumont Lamar, and they beat St. Thomas. So if you look at those two resumes, which one of those two teams with the same record is a top 10 team, and which one's just a top 25 team? I know they played head to head. I know South Dakota beat them by 5, but if you look at the whole overall picture versus just one game, it's really hard to say that South Dakota is a top 10 team. I mean, but there are some folks who, South Dakota State beat up on North Dakota, and there are some folks who took North Dakota out of the top 25 completely. So everybody has their opinion. I think a healthy discourse and healthy discussion on polls is a good thing. But I think you should also call out polls that are just absolute bullshit, where the voters have not put any of the effort into doing any of the research or anything like that for the polls. That's my 2 cents. That's my rant. I just I saw someone throwing throwing stones when they live in a glass house this week, and I just wanted to calmly address that. Let's look at the games for next week, so I can do this and go pack for my work or for my trip. Only 3 games. It's a really light slate next week. A lot of bye weeks, which is probably good because about this time is when you want to get a bye week so you can address some stuff. Real quick, I'm going to take a sip of beer. Shout out to Martin House Brewery in Fort Worth. They don't sponsor us, but I wish you did. Much better. Okay. So let's see. We got Stephen F. Austin going to Utah, going to play Utah Tech. Last year Utah Tech beat SFA at home on homecoming. It was a surprise to just about everybody who was there. In fact, maybe some Utah Tech fans as well. I don't think you'll see that same result this year. I know it's going to be in St. George, Utah, and not Nacogdoches, but SFA looks like they've righted their wrongs, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They're looking a lot tighter, looking a lot better. I don't think this is going to be a blowout like the Commerce game was, but I think you're going to see probably a 20-point win. Maybe that is a blowout. Depends on how you want to look at it. But that's what I think it'll be. Southern Utah going to play Tarleton State. Now, Tarleton State's mascot's the Texans, Coach Fitzgerald. Texans. They're not cats. Although a follow-up to that, if you go watch the coach's show this week, they put a cat counter up on the thing, which is pretty damn funny too. So shout out to Coach Fitzgerald and Southern Utah for leaning in and taking having some fun with it. But anyway, Southern Utah travels Stephenville to play Tarleton State. This I think is going to be a measuring stick for both these teams. Tarleton has looked good this year. They've got some good wins. What would have been considered good wins at the beginning of the year, beating narrowly beating Southeastern Louisiana. Probably not as strong of a win as you think it is, but there's folks who still think that the United Athletic Conference is weaker than the Southland. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Southern Utah, though, has to go on the road. Southern Utah also has to play a complete game in Stephenville. The weather is probably going to be a bit, I don't know if it's going to rain. It's going to be nice up there for once, but at least temperature wise, I don't know if it's going to rain. So heat probably won't be a factor for this one. But Southern Utah's got to play a complete game. They've got to move the ball. I think they can do it. I'm going to take Southern Utah on this one. We'll say 28-17-ish. 28, yeah, somewhere in there. 28-7, yeah, 28-17, I think is what we'll do. And then I guess what would be the game of the week, or what could have been the game of the week. This is probably another example of what would have been a game of the week when you were looking at the calendar 3 weeks ago. But with the way the season has gone now, anyway, Southeast Missouri is going to travel down to play one of them cats, Central Arkansas. They're in Conway on the Stripes. That kicks off at 4 p.m. Central, which so you can get yourself a good afternoon game. Now, SEMO just has not looked like themselves, the SEMO you expect to see. And it's a little concerning with when you have Geno Hess, when you have De Laurent, you have these, or Paxton De Laurent, you have these great weapons. It's just their defense isn't keeping them in the game. So, and then Central Arkansas on the other side of the ball, they showed vulnerable, or Southern Utah showed some of the Central Arkansas vulnerabilities. They showed how you can let Shandarick Powell go for 100 yards, but you're not going to get absolutely raced. You just have to pick a facet of the game that you're going to protect. And I think Shandarick Powell is such a powerful weapon. It can almost serve as a detriment to the Central Arkansas defense, because he is such, if you go back and look at the North Dakota State game, he is such a powerful, explosive runner. He's breaking off 70-yard runs for touchdowns, which is great, except the defense has just spent the past 6 minutes on the field. So they're off for 1 play, 2 plays, and then they're back on. So it's gassing the defense. And I don't know if that's a good thing for Coach Brown and the Bear or Cats, or I guess like Sam Houston, I guess this is a definition of a Bearcat now. Anyway, with this game, it's at home, it's on the Stripes. I don't think Central Arkansas is looking past SEMO for SFA, just from the fact that it's a little bit of a rivalry game between Central Arkansas and SFA. I think that they're going to be focused on it. I think they take the dub. I think it's going to be 35-31. I think SEMO will be able to move the ball, and then I just don't think they're going to win. But then that really would set up a very, very interesting game next week between, or the following week between Central Arkansas and SFA, because I think that would be an early preview of who's getting a playoff spot on whoever wins that. And again, by the time we get to next week, there could be 4 UAC teams in the top 25. 4 was the ones that would deserve it. So the conference is looking good and strong. I mean, I think the Big Sky and MVFC each have 5. I think one of them has 6 right now, right? CAA still has a couple. Like, I mean, the United getting 4 in the top 25 would be almost a coup against everyone who has talk shit on them during the offseason about them being a weak conference. Yeah. So look, anyway, that's it. It's a short show this week. Next week will be fun. You need to come back, tell your friends, because I am going to have special guests. I'm going to have Jamie Williams on this one. I'm going to have also Jamie Williams's buddy, and now my buddy too, Coach Delane Fitzgerald from Southern Utah. It's their bye week. I convinced him to come on. So you need to come check this one out, because this will be fun. I'm sure he's going to love all your comments, and bring anything you have. I will say, in talking to Coach Fitzgerald, he is pretty honest, and he may have to protect what he says just a little bit, but I think you'll get some good answers. So anyway, that's it. Like and subscribe this channel if you haven't. Like and subscribe all the FCS shows. Everybody on the FCS Fans Nation Network, because we've got the Sunday show with Matt, Jamie, and Kyler. We've got the Jackrabbit Illustrated. We got the B Team and their cable access TV intro. We got the Jay and Keith show. We got now the 1AA parlay betting show on Saturday. Not saying that you should sports bet, but if that is what you like to do, that's a good show to watch with Colby and Montana Parlay. And then of course you got Fight On Montana, but they're not very happy this year. Well, they're 4-1, but they're not happy with some of the other stuff you're hearing. Sorry. Brendan said not everyone can be on cable, so either the Brewers are getting beat or it's a commercial break. One of the two. Brendan, I'm not sure which one. But also too around the FCS, shout out to folks like FCS Nation Radio, Hack City, the Blue Bloods with Zach, and Sam Herder. Like if you're not following them on Twitter or social media, make sure you do that. Make sure you go visit their websites, go read all their stuff. That's all the things that. You want to come talk about it, Brendan? You seem heated. You want to come vent? I'll stay on for you. I mean, I still have half the beer ish. We can hug it out. Let's see what he says. Maybe we won't sign off too quickly. If he feels up to it. It's actually really good beer, by the way. If you guys are in Texas and you're lucky enough to find this at your HEB or something like that, it's like lemon icebox pie. But if Brendan says it's best we don't. But remember what happened last night? You were in a bad mood, and then you got your curds burgled. So just don't forget that. All right, then. Well, listen, guys. If you don't get that reference, go back and watch the B Team show. It's on YouTube, and you can also listen to it on Spotify and other streaming platforms. All right. But anyway, that's it. We'll let this go for the week. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for hanging out. Y'all have a great week. Keep safe, and we'll talk next week. See ya.